Howdy guys, and welcome to another episode of my Encounter Workshop series. Today I have 11 interesting encounters that you can utilize in an urban environment for party levels 1 through 3. These encounters come in 2 different difficulty levels, regular and elite, and they already come pre-balanced using my balancing methodology, which you can check out here if you're interested in that. And feel free to check out the timestamps in the description down below to easily navigate to whatever encounters you're looking for. But let's not waste any more time and go ahead and jump into our first regular encounter for level 1. Now, for our first encounter, we're going to be utilizing One Stone Cursed. These hyper-realistic statues of people can be used in so many different creative ways. I already cooked up an amazing quest that you can use them in. The premise of this quest will be a murder mystery where the party is tasked with investigating a missing persons report, which will lead them either to a stone statue garden or a museum. At either of these locations is where they'll meet the murderer themselves, Michelangelo. No, not the Ninja Turtle, but an evil twist of the historic sculptor Michelangelo. Throughout this investigation, the party should catch on some clues that these statues might not be what they seem, as they seem to be almost alive upon closer inspection. And if during their investigation they start to suspect that these statues might not be stone, but might actually be people, you can have those statues come to life right there on the moment to try to stall the party, letting Michelangelo escape. Or if they don't suspect anything now and they try to come back later at night to investigate, that's when you can have them roam around like Five Nights at Freddy, trying to patrol, keeping anyone away from the sculptor himself, or he's cooking up another piece to add to his collection. But be very careful, as someone in your party could become petrified if they fail their save and throw twice against the statue's claw attack. And at this low level, they really don't have too many options to counter this. For our next encounter, we're going to be using One Animated Change Library. Now, this is the perfect encounter if you want to utilize and implement a classic trope into your city, a Thieves Guild. The way you're going to be utilizing this magical bookshelf is if the party interacts with it in the wrong order, that's when it comes alive and starts to attack them, chaining them up and choking them out, trying to silence them. However, if they do manage to interact with the bookshelf in the proper order, it opens up, revealing a secret passage into the Thieves Guild tunnels or their main base. Now, I know what you're wondering. Where am I going to put this bookshelf? Well, there's so many different options. There's a very obvious and very boring answer of the library, but you can put this where you would logically find any bookshelf or this large collection of books, a temple, a bookstore, an orphanage, or even the private study of a regular citizen, which turns out to be the boss of the Thieves Guild themselves. But the party doesn't know that just yet. But there's so many interesting places that you can put this bookshelf to lead to a secret tunnel or something like that. For our first elite encounter, we're going to have a tried and true fantasy classic monster, One Mimic. But we're not going to use it in the normal boring way where it disguises a chest somewhere in the city. Instead, here are 2 fun ideas on how you can use it. The first one being as a false wall inside of a back alleyway or something like that. That way it's blocking off the entryway or entrance to some either cult or Thieves Guild or some other organization that's trying to be covert. While the second idea makes it a little bit more chaotic, it is 100% a predator in this situation. Have the party investigate a bunch of missing reports of workers or other people in the sewers going missing, and as they go and investigate, they don't see anything that could have killed them, but they do notice that there is a weird ladder where they didn't think there was a manhole above them. And as they climb up the ladder, they notice a little bit too late they're entering into the maw of the mimic itself, ready to munch down on top of them. For our first regular encounter at level 2, we're going to be using 4 smoke methods. There are so many different creative ways that you can start this encounter, and each one has their pros and cons and can all be super wacky or super serious. The first one being at some type of major bonfire in the city after some type of celebration or some religious holiday. Or if you want something a little bit more serious, at the burning pyre of some type of witch hunt. Now, if you don't like those examples, use some other type of event or some other scenario that creates a whole lot of smoke. That way, it makes sense that a bunch of these smoke methods can cross over the elemental plane into ours and start wreaking havoc everywhere. Narrate how there's a bunch of smoke methods scattered throughout the city, attacking everyone indiscriminately, but other adventurers and guards are stepping up and trying to take care of them. But these 4 smoke methods in particular are up to your party to handle. Now, in terms of any interesting tactics to utilize these creatures, I would say have them use their Cinder Breath essentially on cooldown. It's not going to do too much, but it can help confuse and just blind the party, making them have to navigate a little bit more through the city. For this next regular encounter, the difficulty of it might go up depending on how well equipped your party is, because we're going to be using One Were-Rat. The reason why the difficulty will change is because the were-rat is technically immune to any damage that isn't from a magic weapon, magical source, or silvered weapon. So if they're all still using a bunch of non-magical things, they're not going to be able to hurt it. But there are so many different ways that you can wave away this mumbo-jumbo immunity by either saying silver coins work or even silverware does the job. But enough of that. Let's talk about what makes this encounter super fun and really engaging. Have the were-rat in its normal human form either commit a murder in front of the party and run away from the scene, or commit some type of robbery where they're running away. That way the party can chase them, forcing this were-rat to escape into the sewers, where it will use its shapeshift ability and transform into a giant rat. Once the party manages to catch up and gets down to the sewers, all they see is a large pack of giant rats. And they go, where the hell did that bandit go? I know this encounter is based around one were-rat, so to help facilitate that, make the rats super easy to hit so long as they roll above an 8 and they only have 1 HP. But while they're focusing on all these other giant rats, the were-rat is slowly positioning itself to give itself advantage to untransform behind them and start attacking them. Another super fun thing about this encounter is if the were-rat manages to successfully bite one of the characters and they fail their constitution saving throw, they can contract were-rat lycanthropy, making them turn into hideous rats randomly on whatever cycle you decide to make it happen on. This opens up so many different opportunities that if enough players contract the lycanthropy, it gives them another quest or some other journey that they can go on to help cure themselves of this curse. For our first elite encounter at level 2, we're going to be utilizing one Kelpie. Now, to properly set up this encounter, we need to have the party either be at the harbor of the city, or the city itself to be a port town, coastal village, or some other city with waterways running throughout it like Venice. That way, the Kelpie has many different avenues with which it can initiate combat and the whole encounter can take place. I would highly recommend that you should foreshadow some of the abilities of the Kelpie in this encounter by having some type of missing person report or some other type of rumor spreading that they've been finding bodies drowned and floating in the waterways or in the harbor itself. That way the party has some idea that whatever it is that's killing them might be either luring them to their death or it has something to do with the water itself. That way they're investigating inside that area specifically. Once they get into the waterways, have the Kelpie lie in wait using its false appearance, looking like seaweed, and then once the party gets close enough, it transforms into one of its many different forms, a lady or a horse, and then starts attacking them. However, before we start the attack, make sure you have that Kelpie try to use its drowning hypnosis first. That way it can maybe get 1 or 2 players to stay underwater and become unconscious, making the fight a little bit easier for the Kelpie. Another thing to take note of is that it does have resistance to bludgeoning and piercing damage, making it a little bit harder to take down by your melee players. Plus, range attacks have half the distance they normally have while fighting underwater. So by utilizing all of these different aspects, this Kelpie fight should be quite the challenge for your party. For our next elite encounter, we're going to tap into one of my personal greatest fears, creepy dolls and toys. And in this encounter specifically, 2 tin soldiers. Outright, they're not that creepy, but you can easily flavor them as some super creepy dolls like Chucky or Annabelle or any other creepy toy like that. My suggestions for this encounter is to treat it like an evil twist on the movie Toy Story, or have an evil version of Geppetto pulling the strings behind these toys, making them commit all these heinous crimes. There are so many different ways that you can utilize these dolls because they're so inconspicuous, but they have to take into consideration that they only have 1 intelligence. So unless you have an evil Geppetto, they're not going to fight too intelligently and just attack whatever's closest to them. Plus, they have a major glaring weakness. They're highly susceptible to the Dispel magic spell, completely making them inert and outright neutralizing this encounter. But at this level, they might not have it prepared or readily available to them. For our first regular encounter at level 3, we're going to be using another classic monster, one doppelganger. The doppelganger is absolutely perfect if you want to relive the good old Among Us days. You can easily set up this scenario in any small town environment, where the party is tasked with trying to figure out who the imposter is and who the murderer is in this town and why people keep disappearing. But if Among Us really isn't your style, no problem. You can easily play the doppelganger as a clever hunter, where its MO is to isolate and ambush its targets. So to set the scenario properly, we're going to have the doppelganger use its shape change ability to look like a lost child or some other type of citizen that is in dire need, approaching the party, pleading them for assistance. To do this successfully, it's going to use its read thoughts abilities to know exactly what it has to say to get the party to act. Using the fact that read thoughts gives it advantage on its deception checks, along with insight, intimidation, intimidation, and persuasion, it's going to do everything it can to try to bring as few players as possible to follow it to some other secluded location. And once they're there, that's when it sneaks up on them, utilizing its surprise attack and ambusher ability to completely devastate whatever players followed it to this area. For our last regular encounter at level 3, we're going to be using 4 swarms of mechanical spiders. If your party is anything like mine, then you will definitely have tons of ways to utilize these creatures, as they can easily work as some type of security system or surveillance system for any type of factory or shop that your party might be trying to break into and rob. But on the very small chance, the infinitesimally small chance, the unbelievable occurrence that your party isn't prone to doing crime all the time, you can still find use for this encounter. Instead of your party being the criminals, have some other type of heist or another group of criminals utilize them as a way to either surveillance where the guards are or interrupt whatever cameras or other things might be in place to protect the vault. And in that situation, you should have a member of the party roll to see if they spot these spiders, and then they can act trying to defend this casino or whatever it is from being robbed. And because they're mechanical spiders, they have a climbing speed, which you know what that means. We're going to be using vertical movement as much as we can in this encounter. Definitely have these spiders climbing along the walls and in the corners of the ceilings. That way, the party has to really look up and try to use ranged abilities to attack them. And if they don't manage to stop these spiders fast enough, maybe the bad guys get away with all the gold. But if the party does manage to defeat them fairly quickly, reflavor their dying scene to have a few of the spiders not actually die, but actually scurry back, trying to retreat back to the criminals who are trying to pull off this heist. That way, the party knows where to go and can find them. For our first elite encounter at level 3, we're going to be using 1 white Abishai. This is a great creature to use if you want to introduce dragon cults or Tiamat into your campaign, as white Abishais are extremely loyal to both Tiamat and her cause. I think on top of the dragon cult and Tiamat, the best way to actually utilize the white Abishai is to set up a political intrigue scenario in this city, where the dragon cult itself is slowly usurping all the different political office roles in this town, slowly changing the policies to suit Tiamat's goals. While a lot of the people running in opposition to the dragon cult politicians have been found dead, while your party is then given a quest to protect the remaining political figures so they don't get killed. This type of scenario puts a lot of pressure on your party directly, as failure in this quest means the direct downfall of this city itself, having all the policies change to completely suit Tiamat's goals. However, before the actual assassination attempt itself, make sure you foreshadow some of the weaknesses of the white Abishai. Having resistance to almost all damage that isn't silvered weapons, plus with the magic resistance, these guys can be very difficult to fight. Have rumors being spread around, or even the people they're set to protect talk about some of the policy changes where silver outside of the coins are being banned in the city itself. No more using silver to trim structures, jewelry, armor, or weapons. Not even purchase of silvered weapons is allowed anymore in the city. But aside from that, the white Abishai doesn't have a lot of intelligence, so it's really just gonna attack whoever it sees first. It's gonna obviously try to prioritize killing its target, but if your party gets in the way, it's gonna try to cut them down quite efficiently, using its reckless attack, giving it advantage, and using its reaction to move up to half of its speed, slashing people every time it gets hit. Final elite encounter at level 3, 1 illusionist wizard and 1 martial artist adept. And in this case specifically, it's going to be a con man and their bodyguard. There are many different ways that you can utilize this duo, but the easiest ones is to have the con man either directly con the party or have the party observe them con someone else. Should the confrontation turn hostile, that's when they spring into action. The illusionist, being a wizard with 16 intelligence, would know that they should always have mage armor up and ready no matter what throughout the day. So we already start off with the base AC of 15 for them. After that, they will always make sure to use their displacement bonus action ability on cooldown, making sure that they almost never get hit, always giving the party disadvantage on attacks against them. Now that we've covered the major defensive features of the illusionist, let's talk about the crazy damage and control that this illusionist can perform. It has an arcane burst ability that does an insane amount of psychic damage that it can do twice every single turn, and it's going to spam this every chance it can. But if the party managed to overwhelm it or get too close and start to swarm him and his bodyguard, that's when he'll use his phantasmal force to lock down one player or major image to build some distance. Now remember, illusion magic is only limited by your creativity, and major image specifically will require the party to either physically interact with the illusion or successfully pass an investigation check to know that it isn't real. So the illusionist and their bodyguard should be fairly relatively safe after doing one or two of these things. But now let's talk about their bodyguard, who is essentially Bullseye and Daredevil rolled into one. Now, depending on what your party composition is, the actions of the bodyguard are going to be very different. If it has a lot of casters using a lot of concentration spells, it's going to do everything it can to unleash its flurry of darts, 5 of them in fact, at these casters trying to break their concentration. But if they're very frontliner heavy, it's gonna absolutely wipe the floor with them, knocking them to the ground and beating them down or pushing them away, putting as much distance between them and the illusionist that they're protecting as possible. But if that's not enough, it is technically a monk, so it has deflect missiles, so any type of ranger or fighter using a gun, it can catch those projectiles too. So if you found this video helpful and enjoyable, give this video a like and comment down below your favorite types of encounters to run in an urban environment. And if you'd like to see more encounters like these for levels 4 and 5, get subscribed so you don't miss out when I release that video. But yeah, see you guys next time.